Hey, we're live, pal. Actually, wrong show. So the reason why I'm doing this is because we're live, pal, is off for the week. My partners, Andrew Zarian and Denise, when you take a full weekend away, and then you come back to your real job and you miss Monday, you have a lot of things to catch up with, and I think they just needed to do some things in their normal jobs and in their real life to catch up for today. But we're gonna be back next week, so that'll be we'll connect, we'll reconnect next week about all the stuff. So, but what happens is that it gives me the opportunity to do something fun with my friends, with my Fight Game Media partners here, Paul Fontaine, Carlos Toro. How are you guys doing?
Excellent.
Doing pretty good. Can't wait to get down to the nitty gritty of it all.
Okay, so if you've listened to all of the stuff on the Patreon, you've heard Paul talk about All Out. You've probably heard me talk about All Out. You haven't heard Carlos talk about All Out. But basically what I'm saying is that I'm going to ask some questions. We'll go over the show. We won't cover it match by match. That's said and done. People did that Sunday night after the show. But I do want to get some perspective. Both of you guys watched it from your homes. I got to be there live, so I have my perspective. We're going to, once JD is ready, I know he was running a bit late. He's going to join us. He was also there live in about a half an hour. Paul's going to tag out. He's got something to do. We're going to tag Jeremy in. Jeremy's kind of waiting at the gorilla position to do his run-in, and then we'll just kind of go over some things. But I just wrote a bunch of topics down that I wanted to get to. And the first topic, and we'll start with Paul, and because you talked about this on your recap with Jeff and Ryan on the Patreon. Where did that show that you watched Sunday night rank in your pantheon of pro wrestling pay-per-views?
So I hate answering the question so soon after the fact, as I'm sure some of you guys do as well. You get recency bias or whatever, but it's definitely in the conversation for best of all time. And the only ones that I think I would even compare it to are two events that I attended live, which are the original Double or Nothing and Takeover Dallas. And as far as stuff I watched live on pay-per-view, WrestleMania X7 and the original ECW One Night Stand.
Interesting.
Yeah, so those are the ones that I would compare this to. Now, what I will say is I also, in our Facebook group, compared it to two other shows that weren't pay-per-views, and that would be the Memorial Day Nitro and the WrestleMania, or the Raw after WrestleMania in 1988, when X-Pac came over from WCW. And to me, those shows represented like a shift in the landscape. And so this show had all of that. So it had the great wrestling, it had the incredible crowd atmosphere, and it had the fact that you were watching something special, and that was going to change the way we watched wrestling going forward. And so for all that, I'm not sure if there's ever been a show that has had all of that.
All right, Carlos, give me your thoughts.
So obviously, this is one of my favorite pay-per-view shows in recent memories. Obviously, I don't have the historical context, given that I'm only 26, and I was born just when the Monday Night War was just
youngster. What a youngster you are!
Him and Parker.
So, but I will say I do agree with Paul on a couple of shows that it's sort of on par. There's a couple of NXT Takeover shows that were sort of similar to that. I like the ECW One Night Stand, the first one, sort of right there, especially with the crowd atmosphere for that one. One show that I thought it was sort of on there. I'm not sure if I would necessarily call it as good or better, or less than, but it was certainly among my favorites. Is sort of comparable to that first NXT Takeover Brooklyn show at the Barclays Center, the one with Bayley and Sasha Banks, with that incredible match that they had. So I was kind of put it. It is one of my maybe 3-5 greatest wrestling shows of all time that I've seen.
What's hard for me when it comes to takeovers is that they were never pay-per-views to me. They were WWE Network specials, so I never looked at them as I would look at when I had to fork over $50 to watch a wrestling show, or even back in the day before Carlos was born, they were $30. And so those takeover shows are great, and they just don't stand out to me in that way. because it's like, and I think this is why. I think it's the branding. So we have WrestleMania 1 through 37, but we also have SummerSlam and Survivor Series, and they're independent shows. And when you just call every important show that you've ever done TakeOver, to me, they just all blend together. I remember matches. I don't remember full cards as well. So just for me, yeah. So our buddy who's watching us, Chris, he says, don't forget the $14.95 in your house. Oh no, I'm not forgetting the in your house, because for our Patreon, the John and I are covering Raw 97. I just had to watch on the plane home Ground Zero, which was a terrible show. Oh my God. I've never seen that show before for a good reason. And then I had to watch it for our show, and no, that was not a good show. So, I was thinking back to live pay-per-views I've been to. SummerSlam 2001 was a fun show. There were stars on that show, Austin and Rock, when they're both, kind of in their prime still. The WCW crossover, Booker T, all those guys. So that was a star-studded show. But I didn't find it to be as good as this one when it came to some of the things that Paul said. And then, WrestleMania's 31 was really fun, and 31 had that moment, right? Like we talked about the moments. You had both Rock and Ronda in a segment. That felt like a giant moment. Seth cashing in felt like a giant moment. So when it comes to moments, like that's the one that kind of I was reminded of that came close. And WrestleMania 26, I got to see Shawn Michaels' retirement match in person, which was great. But up and down the card, I don't think it hit to the level of this. So live, to me, it is probably my favorite live wrestling show that I've ever been to. And, on pay-per-view, like Paul said with the recency bias thing, I'm kind of like, I just watch wrestling much differently today. Like I can remember Royal Rumble 1992 and that feeling just like, oh my gosh, the wrestling industry has changed. But it didn't really mean as much to a business sense or from, the fallout of that show. I think I had such high expectations, and then what happened was just, kind of frustrating and disappointing, post WrestleMania that year. So let's actually talk about the best, what most people consider the best match. And I was kind of wondering, and again, Carlos doesn't go as far back as Paul, but Paul, is that the best cage match you've ever seen? Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks? Because there's a Brett and Owen match that I know you love.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, as I was watching it, it never even occurred to me that it was. So I'm inclined to say no, but that doesn't mean it wasn't great and it wasn't among the best. And I think maybe it's just because I'm not as a big of a fan of those two teams as a lot of other people are. And I'm not taking anything away from the match. I'm just saying, I've watched a million cage matches in my life, and this is in the top, like 0.5% of them. But Brett and Owen, probably some War Games matches, which I don't know if you're considering that. Like if you're just talking straight one-on-one cage matches, or if you're considering Hell in the Cell matches in there as well, then, you're Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. Yeah. And not Taker Foley. But in AEW, like for sure. And even like, I can't even remember any, I mean, it's tough. Like, I'm not going to say it wasn't better. Like, I'm not going to say it's better than any. Magnum and Tully, I think, had a really good one back in the 80s that I didn't see live, but I've seen since then. So it's also tough to compare something you watch live to something that everyone told you, hey, this is a great match, go watch it.
Yeah. The thing I think that's pretty interesting about this question is when I think back to greatest cage matches, the cage wasn't as bastardized as it is today.
Yeah.
So you can think back and go, oh, a cage match actually main evented WrestleMania 2, Hogan and Bundy, which I would not call a great match or even a good match. But that cage, that big blue cage, it looked like those guys were hurting each other with that very large cage, the illusion of it. So that is memorable. Hulk Hogan against Big Boss Man on Saturday night's main event, where he does the superplex, that is memorable. And that was actually a pretty good match. But it's just the cage was so much different when we were younger. Some guys are also talking about in the chat about War Games. I think War Games 91, War Games 92. Now, the old school War Games matches from the late 80s, 87, 88, those were a little bit different because they were taking those things around the towns and they were selling house show tickets with that match. And so, I'm sure people who saw those matches that we didn't get to see could say, oh, yeah, but what about that War Games match that was in my town that was not on TV or not taped for a pay-per-view or whatever? But yeah, so to do I think those guys looked at the cage as an opportunity to be super creative and to do things that people haven't done in a cage match. I think they also knew that because of how WWE has treated the cage in the last 15 years, that they sort of had to, they kind of had to teach the audience all over again what a cage match is really supposed to be. And so I thought that they did a really good job with that too, because there was the one thing where he threw the bag over the top of the cage. So there was a little bit of shenanigans there, but they didn't have a bunch of run-ins and they didn't have someone slamming somebody's head on the steel cage door. It was really like, this is what, in their style, right? Because the Bucks don't really have a style where this is a grudge match. This is a fight. They have a style where it is high spots. And that's same with the Lucha Brothers. So you had to do that match inside of a cage to make it look brutal, to make it look realistic. For some, I'm sure there were too many high spots, but that's just the Young Bucks in general and people who like their style or don't like their style. But I thought just watching it, just the feats of athleticism and the timing, and there was, I would say the only spot I didn't like was when they were in sort of they were all around each other and they were trading off punches and super kicks and stuff. That was hokey. It was actually really hokey, but that was really the only thing that I thought was, maybe a little bit too over the top.
I thought they saved that though when Phoenix did the kip up and did the 2 super kicks at the end, so that saved that segment for me.
Yeah,
right,
I mean, I
Carlos,
thought the trading off was a little bit hokey, but to me, it didn't really bother me because overall, it was kind of part of the entire match of it just being high spot after high spot after high spot. And for that crowd and for the audience, I mean, that was about as good a match as you can possibly ask for, given the style that they were asking to do. And one thing that you mentioned, Garrett, about having to reteach the audience about what a cage match is supposed to look like, I kind of forgot that a cage match didn't involve having a guy hanging off the outside of the cage and then wondering like, oh, is he gonna drop and fall? And then all of a sudden the other guy just kind of brings him up and it kind of looks a little bit weird and it kind of looks a little bit, I don't want to use the fake word, but it kind of takes away from it. I thought that as far as cage matches are concerned, I've seen the Tully Magnum and I've seen Brett Owen. I would definitely put it right up there, maybe just a notch below. I think maybe it's me trying to get away from recency bias, but I kind of look at it more as not where does it stand as far as steel cage matches, because that's an entire can of worms, but where does it rank among tag team matches of all time? And to me, I thought that the standard bearer for best modern tag team wrestling was Bucks and Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page from last year's Revolution, I believe. And I thought that this was actually better, or if not slightly better in some ways. I can see an argument for either way. I think that I enjoyed the match just as much. I think that the stories, obviously completely different stories, and I like the use of the thumbtack Jordans for that one, and I love
or as Dave calls them on Wrestling Observer Radio, tennis shoes, which is exactly what my mom calls any sort of athletic shoe. She calls it a tennis shoe, but then he said sneakers. I'll talk to him. Just he can call them Jordans or J's, or old school people will know this, or JoJo's. That's what people call Jordans. JoJo's.
Yeah, but I thought that the match was great. I loved the implementation of it, and I gotta give kudos to Brandon Cutler because making that throw, it's a one shot you only get, and he did it about as perfect a throw as anyone could possibly ask for in that situation.
Okay, so there were actually, before that, there might be some people chiming in here who've never seen us before because our YouTube subscriptions tripled basically over the weekend. I put up on Saturday, I put up on Friday night, I put up CM Punk singing "Thank You for Being a Friend" with the Jurassic Express, and that on Twitter it went pretty wild. On Facebook it got a decent amount of views, and so we kind of had. And all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, we're getting some subs here, 20 extra subscriptions or whatever." And then on Saturday night, I put up the finish to Jon Moxley and Nick Gage, or the finish, not Nick Gage, Matt Cardona. I mean, it wasn't even a match, really. It was just a situation. And that thing was like, oh, wow, like people are really watching this. And we went, we added like another 80 subscribers. And then I put up some of the videos from the pay-per-view. And the one that went bonkers was the post after pay-per-view's over. Daniel Bryan basically cut a promo and said why he's here in AEW. That thing is at like 600,000 views on YouTube, which is nutty. And so thanks to that video and some of the others, the Moxley video is at like 60K with Cardona. We tripled our YouTube subs. So if there are people here who came in from those videos, I really appreciate you guys being here. It's kind of fun. It was kind of fun to see those numbers just go insane. And I hope Tony Khan doesn't remove them.
That was my worry when I saw them. I mean, it's at 600,000. I mean, if it's gotten to this point and it hasn't been taken down, I think we're okay for now.
That's more than watch BTE.
I did have a couple of videos that had copyright claims on them, and I thought, oh no, here we go. But honestly, like it is their property, and I'm not even going to complain about it. I just put them up because I thought they were cool things that maybe the pay-per-view audience didn't see. But the copyright claims were for Minoru Suzuki's song and Moxley's song from the entrance, because he came down right in our aisle. So Jeremy, who will be on in a second, Jeremy was sitting on the end. And I think he was trying to go out or something, and people were trying to leave in our section. They're like, nope, you can't leave. You got to stay put. And so we're like, okay, something's going to happen. And Moxley came right down our aisle. And on YouTube, I have never had this before. When I used to get copyright claims back in the day, they just wanted you to either edit it or delete it or whatever. They will mute the audio for you and allow you to keep it up. So that's what they did. So unfortunately, if you didn't get to hear Minoru Suzuki's song on that video, which is probably, a very important part, it's just a copyright thing, and I completely get it. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to bring up here, which is we saw 4 surprises. Ruby Soho, which I would guess most wrestling fans who are pretty dialed in expected when it came to be the Joker of the Casino Battle Royale. We saw Minoru Suzuki, which I just mentioned. That was a true surprise. I don't know. I didn't see anywhere where anybody had that in a tweet or in a report. So that was a true surprise. And then we had Adam Cole and we had Bryan Danielson. So I wrote something on the website, fightgamemedia.com. You can go check it out, about how you surprise wrestling fans today. And what you don't really surprise them anymore, because if you follow closely enough, you're going to read reports. You're going to kind of know. I know Paul hates this about the wrestling business today, but what the companies do, and this is comparable because WWE just did it with SummerSlam. When you prepare the surprise and it is in the plans and you can kind of plant some seeds like the CM Punk thing, you can build so much anticipation. CM Punk thing was the worst kept secret in pro wrestling. Bryan Daniel coming up All Out was the worst kept secret in pro wrestling. But what happens is because the information is going to come out, AEW uses it to their advantage. You have websites like ours. You have podcasts like ours. We talk about it. We create the promotion for them. And social media now is the thing. And so that is the surprise now. It is getting your customers, your fans, to create the anticipation virally. And then when the surprise happens, the fans are so happy to be right. Oh, I knew this was going to happen. I'm so right about this. And they go nuts and they go crazy. Now, the one thing that was so interesting, everybody knew Bryan Danielson was going to be there. They had their shirts. They had their signs. They were not sure Adam Cole was going to be there. Instead, they were very hopeful that Adam Cole was going to be there. And so I don't know if you guys had seen this tweet, but I found out Sunday before the show that he was clearly going to be in the building. That didn't mean that they were going to use him or that he was going to come out. He's at the show. Andrew Zarian, my podcast partner, he had this tweet. Let me remove that banner so you can all see it a little bit better. That is a Panama sunrise.
Oh.
And he said, "What a view." And that was his way of telling his Twitter followers that Adam Cole was going to be there. Then I talked to Jeremy and I, we're going to bring Jeremy on here in a bit. We talked to Brian. We literally got to the show. We're in line. We're getting our CM Punk ice cream bars and food. And so we had 10 minutes to kill. So we're just kind of hanging out with Brian. And I was like, "So you saw the Cole thing?" He's like, "Yep, he's here. I've been told he's here." And the fans, because this stuff kind of happened a little late, they didn't know. They were still just very hopeful. So when Adam Cole comes out at the end of the main event, there were some fans who thought that they were possibly being swerved and that Cole was the surprise and we're saving Danielson for later. And then when Danielson comes out, then it's just like a surprise all over again. We're like, oh, so they did this so brilliantly. And I just kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts, because you saw it on the pay-per-view. Like, when it came to the delivery of those surprises, did they completely work for you like they worked for the live crowd? And we'll start with you, Paul.
So before I give my answer, I want to ask, because you were in the building and I watched on TV, which surprise do you think got over better with the crowd?
Suzuki was a giant surprise. So I think that surprise reaction was...
Sorry, I should rephrase my question. And I'm specifically talking about Cole and Bryan. Which one got
Bryan's the bigger one.
Okay, see, and when I was watching, and that's kind of what I thought you were going to say, when I was watching, to me, it felt like Cole was the bigger reaction. Yes. So I don't know if that was just the way it was mic'd or the way they showed the crowd or whatever, but to me, and for the reason you said, everyone was expecting Bryan, but they weren't necessarily expecting Cole, so that's why you got a more visceral reaction to Cole. And the other funny thing was, I thought you might bring this up, in our Facebook group, our friend David Lavelle did a poll of which surprise did you enjoy the most, and Suzuki won by an overwhelming majority.
It was a true surprise. Nobody knew.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now, it's the kind of surprise that made sense.
Yeah.
So that, like when you put it together, you knew he's doing indies and, he's tagging with Archer at some point, and him and Moxley are going to go at it again. So, that was, and then to actually see them go at it, I mean, that to me, that was even a bigger surprise. Him showing up is one thing. Him actually getting physical with Moxley and giving him the Gotch pile driver, like, I was in heaven. Like, I like that more. But I do think that they learned something from the way they handled the Christian, Big Show, Mark Henry debuts. Mark Henry got a way bigger reaction than Christian, and Christian's a way bigger star. But it's because of the way they promised a big surprise and delivered Christian, and with Mark Henry they promised nothing and delivered, hey, Mark Henry.
Yeah,
So
Brady was there with live. He was sitting in a row in front of me. No, I think he may have even been in my row, but just on the other side. He said he thought,
get my seat.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Paul was supposed to be there. So Brian, he said, was bigger, but the Bebe chant was the deafening one. All right, Carlos, what did you think? What did you think about those surprises and those moments?
I will say this, at least watching on TV, it did kind of felt like Cole had maybe the bigger, like, instant visceral reaction to me. I thought with Brian, with Brian, it may not have appeared as much on TV because of two things. One, I think the crowd just may have tired itself out because of there were so many surprises, and I mean, the human body can only produce so much excitement in a 4-hour wrestling show. And I think too, partially, I know there were a lot of people that knew Final Countdown was an old song that Bryan Danielson had used prior to that, but I don't think everyone had known that. I think that may have been part of it, part of the reason. I'm not. Maybe it's me. I knew, but didn't get the impression that everyone did. But I thought that Brian's surprise was handled better because we're like with the cage match. It kind of had to retaught us the way we look at surprises, because normally when we have a surprise that big with Adam Cole, we're expecting, okay, that's the big surprise. That's it. Show's over. Put the little end credits logo, and we go off the air.
Right.
We're not used to seeing two major surprises in a row quite like that. So I thought that Cole, to me on TV, got the slightly bigger reaction, quote unquote, but I thought Brian's was a better surprise because of the fact that we're not used to surprises handled in this manner.
Yeah. So, I that's a great point though, that Paul made about the Mark Henry one and the Christian one. And I wonder, someone should ask Tony that. I wonder, I don't know if what he would say about that, but that is interesting, because part of being a new company is you got to learn from mistakes very quickly. And it went from slightly disappointing surprises to like, oh my gosh, this is like really excellent surprises. So we have another comment from someone who was there, Lindsay, who I met at that weekend. We got to have food, and she came and joined for one of the podcasts that we did. Brian was a sustained reaction where the excitement lasted for a long time, maybe because he got to ride out the rest of the show, post-show, where people were hyped from the whole card. Thank you, Lindsay, for your comment. Okay, so a couple of other things before we let Paul go and bring Jeremy on. Actually, just one more thing, because then I'll bring Jeremy on, and we'll kind of talk about some of the stuff that he and I got to do on that weekend. So if you guys had to pick, you only get one. You get one thing as your favorite thing on this show. Paul, you go first. What was your favorite thing on All Out?
You know what? I'll be honest. The 10-man tag on the pre-show, I loved it. It was so much fun. That's not really the truth, but I wanted to mention it. No, my favorite thing on the whole show was Daniel Bryan coming out. Like, that's what I've been waiting for. And I've been very vocal. I did not want to see Adam Cole. I don't think they need him. But I mean, he'll be great, and I'm sure I'll enjoy everything he does. But Brian is someone, there's so many matches I want to see with him there. And so that was 100%. Big for me. Yeah.
100%. By the way, how long do you think it's going to take for you to stop saying Daniel Bryan and to say Bryan Danielson?
I'm getting better. I still say Big Show a couple times.
I said Big Show all weekend long. I think
I said Daniel Bryan already once on this
Actually,
show.
You know what? I made this comment. The biggest surprise on the whole show was the fact that JR didn't call him Daniel Bryan once.
Okay, so now that you mentioned that, did he call anybody else? Someone was
Ruby
saying
Riott.
He called her Ruby Riott?
He did, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, good, but he didn't. I mean, Adam Cole. I mean, he's still Adam Cole. But and he called Big Show at least once.
That's awesome.
But,
I love it. Gotta love it.
But he got Bryan Danielson. He got that the whole way.
All right, Carlos, what was your favorite thing on the show?
there's about 8 things that would be an instant super close second, but I think to me, the ending and just the overall post-match of the Lucha Brothers winning the tag title, just the overall reaction they got, and just the overall sweet moment that Penta had with his family. I thought that was super sweet. I thought that whole moment just kind of it was a perfect way to really elevate Lucha Brothers into really huge. I mean, there were already stars in AEW, but that just elevated them. The match, the moment, the pre-match song that happened. I thought everything, and it all culminated in that sweet little moment, and they just got elevated big time.
Had you been disappointed in their run so far in AEW before this title win?
I don't know. It's a little weird because like their high moments prior to Sunday, their high moments, you know, some of the matches they've had was just unbelievable. I remember the Escalera de la Muerte match that they had a couple of years ago, which is still a fantastic match in my opinion. But I don't know, because I think as far as what their absolute best they can produce match wise, they've been able to deliver. It just that I think it's part of AEW is still trying to figure out how to book just about everything almost on the fly. I'm not sure if I would call it disappointing, but I would say that if it has this win, how it got handled just kind of made everything worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. So, Paul, thanks for coming on. We're going to bring Jeremy in. I know you got some stuff to do. Thank you for taking, the time out of your day to do this. Those of you on the Patreon, we just put up Paul and Ryan's in the clinch, and I titled it Patty the Batty just for Paul.
Young Owen Hart, if you haven't seen him. It looks like.
All right, Paul, take care.
You bet.
All right, let's add Jeremy to the stream. What is up, Jeremy?
Not much. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
I don't think your mic is actually the output or the input there. You might be using your computer speakers. So just get that figured out. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, and Carlos, I don't know how much of this you have seen or heard from over the weekend, but there was a GCW show. Mm-hmm. Denise actually did the ring announcing for the first night, Friday night, and then so Saturday night, I was asked, or I shared the story, and I think people like the story. But basically, over the week, John Moxley told me to go to the GCW show, and he didn't say go like just, hey, you should go to the show. He sort of said it in like a shaming way, like if you hadn't, I'll say it in the PG-13 way. If you had any courage, you would go to the GCW show. And I said, I kind of wanted to hang out with people, and I didn't want to really bog up my day with wrestling. And then he said, what in expletive after that? And so when it came to Saturday, we'd gone to dinner with Brian and Dave and people from our group, Robert and Lindsay and Brady, Steve Geimer. Who am I missing? Jeremy, did I miss anybody of who went to Texas Day Brazil with us? Dave's kids, Cody, Dave's kid, John. Cody, okay, Corey and John Muse, yep. Corey, and Cody, Dave's son, and his girlfriend Trinity. So I still don't think your mic is working, by the way.
Okay.
So I think it's just an input issue. I think your input has your computer microphone working and not your actual microphone, or it actually may even be your headphones. Okay, so we go, and so Brian is asking Dave, I kind of want to go to this GCW show, and so I'm just like, oh, if they go, I'm gonna want to go. It's just kind of one of those, FOMO kind of things.
Yeah.
And so obviously I have the Moxley story in the back of my head going like, I could then tell him that I actually did go. Problem was sold out. Like it was sold out even when I looked into it, when he was telling me to look into it. It was already sold out. They had to go to a bigger building. They sold the ticket, then they sold more tickets. So that is that's kind of how we get into this conversation of, okay, now how do we get in? If we want to go, how do we get in? Now, Dave is Dave. I'm sure if he sent Brett Lauderdale a tweet, he would get in. Brian went through somebody who is very near and dear to the F4W empire. I will not out this person. Great guy. And then I had my buddy Nick McMood, who Jeremy and I got to hang out a lot with this weekend. He was like, hey, if you want to go, I can get you in. And at that point I said, well, I think the plan is we're going to go to dinner and then we're going to do this show with Dave and Brian. But now that Dave and Brian wanted to go, I was like, well, let me ask. Maybe Nick can get me in, and then you guys only have to worry about getting yourselves in. Talk to Nick. He's like, yep, show up. I'll be there. Gets me in. Brian and Dave get in. And so we're sitting, me and Dave are sitting second row at GCW in plain view of flying light tube shards. So Brian, we don't even know where Brian is at this point. I see Nick. We hang out with Nick. Filthy Tom Lawler's right behind us. We're hanging out with Filthy Tom. And go through the War Games match, which is ridiculous. It's a spectacle. I'm just thinking, like, I've never seen anything like this before. It's like a horror film. Like, you don't want to look, but then you can't stop looking. And there's pieces flying at us. Thankfully, I didn't get hit with anything. And I think at some point I was like, okay, it's not going to hit me. I'll focus on this. Guys going through glass, guys going through light tubes. That match ends. Nick Gage, who is mesmerizing the crowd at this point. Everything he does, they pop. Everything he says, they repeat. Everything he leads them to, they say. Like, he has such a mastery of his audience. Yeah, I'll say, whatever. If you don't like the way he wrestles, or that wasn't really what I was paying attention to. I was really paying attention to this dude understands his audience so well. He has such a connection with them, and he's a master of charisma and whatever it is that they love about him. So got to see that. Amazing. Then they do the match with Cardona. Cardona has an open challenge. He calls out somebody. It's Frank the Clown, of all people. And Frank the Clown has immediate heel heat. I was telling the story of years ago at Wally Mania, our buddy Damien, who was there. We got to hang out with Damien and his wife, Inez. He wanted to take a picture with Noelle Foley at Wally Mania. It was the very first one. So I'm getting ready to take the picture. Right as I'm about to snap it, Frank the Clown slides in on the other side of Noelle. And all I did was move the camera to instantly crop him out. And people were behind me cracking up that I cropped him out. And he didn't know that I cropped him out. So Frank the Clown, heel heat with us just for that moment. And, he gets beat up really quickly. Cardona hits him with the spinner belt, pinned, game over. They basically try to make us think that G Raver is the guy who's coming out to challenge Cardona next. Instead, it's like all the druids, and then Moxley unmasks. Like, the roof almost blew off the place. Like, to be a Gorilla Monsoon, the roof literally flew off the top of this building. And Moxley and Nick Gage had their little stare down. That was awesome. Just to see it. Like, again, I'm not this hardcore wrestling match guy. Like, that's just not what I enjoy. But I cannot watch this and then say it doesn't work, because like that building was so loud, and just the way that Nick Gage and Moxley and Cardona had the crowd in the palm of their hands. Just awesome stuff. And just the one thing that was pretty clear, though, I was kind of joking with the guys after we left, is, a lot of those guys in those matches are not big, giant athletes. And then you see Mox and Cardona, and you're like, these guys are giant men compared to these other guys. So that happened. Great time. Joey Janela has a little twig or something, and he gives it to Dave. He's like, hey, Dave, can I take your picture? And Dave just kind of like, what? But Dave and Janela get along, so Dave's like, sure. And then he holds up the little twig, and Joey says, I just want to go viral. We see what the output is, which is a picture of Dave Meltzer and this little twig and the words GCW plant on Janella's Twitter to go viral. I should have actually had the photo of that. So that was fun. If we go to the next thing, would have been Rampage, which Jeremy and I got to see. Did you get to watch Rampage on TV, Carlos?
I managed to catch a little bit of it, yeah.
All right, Jeremy, your first experience at AEW TV. No, I'm not talking about pay-per-view. I'm talking about TV show. What did you think of how they did things?
I was a lot happier with the way that a presentation for TV, because I've been to a WWE presentation before, and the video packages in a WWE presentation just kill me. They kill me dead because they slow down the crowd, they slow down the energy. There was nothing about that. This show was designed to keep moving, to keep the energy up for the crowd. The announcers were coming out, having a good time with the crowd. The engagement was great. The dark matches ahead of time, I felt like a lot of people knew you don't have to be there right away for the dark matches. And then once you got to the Rampage, they knew that was the main event. And from the moment Malachi Black came out onto the stage, that crowd was hot.
Yeah.
Hot.
Yep. So I agree with you. I guess the thing is I think in the future, I would rather go to a Dynamite taping because you get 2 hours of the first run important stuff. I didn't think it was hard to sit through dark, but I don't know how many times I would want to do that again, to sit through all the dark matches, because there was some really bad matches. There was some, you get to see some people who maybe you are a fan of but don't get on regular TV a lot. There was a Julia Hart thing, and I know Julia Hart's a dandy of some folks. Her match was really bad, so I'm glad that wasn't actually on Dynamite. But then you got to see this. What was the woman's name?
The Sky Blue and Red Velvet match.
Yes, which I actually went to go say hi to a friend, Ryan. I think is Falcon or Falcone. He had come and he wanted to say hi, so I didn't get to see it. I saw it on the TV, but it sort of explained, the why you thought that was a really good moment on that night.
Now, I'm curious as to how long, I would say, how long are those, dark matches, like pre and post taping? Because I remember when I went to a Dynamite taping in Cleveland, this is January 2020, so this is like a couple of months before the pandemic. Going through the dark matches were actually was a bit of a breeze. Now, the crowd obviously back then also didn't treat this as seriously or must see as the actual TV taping, but they were still, there was a nice little break for before and after the Dynamite taping.
It was interesting. The turnaround on the dark matches per ref, wrestlers, production, 10 minutes each one tops. They were in and they were out. It was one of the reasons I wanted to check it out is I have a curiosity as to see how the sausage is made with the TV production and how they go about doing it and the efficiency and the production values. And I was just curious as all hell about how they were doing it. And I was like, this is a very watchable production, and it's designed to keep the fans energized, as opposed to making a TV product and then catering to the fans a bit. It felt like their priorities were more on level with each other instead of a 1-2.
So, so we got to see that. And can you, I'm going to let Jeremy explain this photo here that I grabbed.
Oh God.
Gotta love that photo.
Friday night.
So, Friday night, we have a couple of great wheelmen in John Muse and Corey Lieb that are getting us around where we need to go. And unbeknownst to us, John had grabbed Brian from the airport right around the time of Rampage. And after the show, because of the pandemic and because it ended at 11:30 at night, everywhere we go, they are just about to shut their doors, and we got nothing. We're looking for food. We're looking for a Denny's. We're looking for IHOP, anything. Everybody closed Friday night. We get to the Domino's. We decide that's the one we're going to do, right across the street from the hotel. We drove 15 miles back and forth looking for a place, and we ended up at a Domino's. Couple people decided to order. Myself, I think everybody else decided to wait. But then John, Big Dave, and his kids, and Brian walk in, and Brian just stomps in the front door, says, "Food!" Orders some food, and so it's just us two sitting out, first two food out, and he looks at me, he just says, "Taking a picture." I'm like, okay. And the next thing we know is the beginning of Brian's gimmick of eating at shit food places all over Chicago.
Yeah, so that was pretty interesting because I don't know if he decided that was his gimmick or if he just figured like, I'm just going to roll with this because the first trolling picture of Chicago, was so impactful and got so much heat from people that he was just going to keep doing it all weekend. Because I don't know if you guys saw this, but he did a video where he was basically fighting with the mixer that he had that didn't work very well. So he's literally like fighting, doing a match with this mixer that didn't work. And I'll show you the picture here in a second of why. Because we went to record Wrestling Observer Radio on Saturday night. And on Saturday night, we did like this is after the GCW show, so it's late. And here's the picture. That mixer that you see right there is not working. So Brian is very specific about the sound of his shows. He wants them to, sound proper, and he doesn't want to do a lot of like post. He just wants it to work and let's put it up and everything. So then he's so mad, and that's where I took that picture because he just couldn't get it to work. So we're like, Dave, this may take a while. Go to sleep. Dave goes to sleep. And so, 45 minutes later, Tony Leader comes in and everyone's coming in and, trying to help us, and we can't get it to work. So finally, Brian figures out how to go back to what our original plan was, which was to use this Focusrite, which is it's not a mixer, but it's what I use here to enable this XLR to go through the computer because the computer doesn't have an XLR input in it. So then, we finally get it recorded, but I think I might have finally gotten to bed like at 3:30 that morning after that show was posted. So anyway, that was that. I want to say there's another photo that I wanted to share with everybody because of what I did on Saturday. So this photo is from the live taping of We're Live Pal on Saturday. We actually did one in person. So you see Denise Salcedo. My mentions on Twitter were ruined because of Denise Salcedo. If she tagged me in anything, I just couldn't even read what was coming. There were so many comments.
Welcome to the
club. Andrew Zarian is right there. And then you see Dave and you see Brian, and Brian's like in mid tweet or mid text. Actually, I wish we could blow that up to see who he's actually talking to. But so we did that live show on Saturday, which was a lot of fun. It's on the F4W YouTube channel. I think people really enjoyed it, and you can sort of see how Andrew's Matman production team works because it was a real shoot. Like, you had cameras, you had mics, you had lighting. They did such a great job, the Matman guys. Shout out to them. And then Andrew invited me to do Matman with them after they did. So we did the We're Live Pal taping, then we did the Matman taping. And so I had 3.5 hours or 4 hours straight of video podcasts that we did. But that was fun. Doing Andrew's show was a lot of fun as well. And let's see, what else did I want to bring up here?
Garrett, I wanted to mention real quick, when you describe the Matman production, I think you're really underselling that. It feels like an on-location TV production. It is
amazing,
unbelievable. I walked in there for just a minute just to say hi, and like where Dave was standing in that previous picture was basically the only free space in the room because every other piece was taken up by equipment of lighting, rig, hard drives, whatever they needed, they had it all there. And then you're just like, oh, so that's why you're ready to locked and loaded for any little thing that you're doing. You are a top to bottom production company. It was impressive.
No, 100%. So we got to go. So, you know, we'd done the Chili's thing a couple times and people are yelling at us going like, you're in Chicago. Why are you doing Chili's? We weren't actually in Chicago. We were in the Chicago area. But we got to go to somewhere called Portillo's that we'd been wanting to go to. And that was a really good place to eat. What did you think, Jeremy, of Portillo's?
I was recommended to get the big beef sandwich, and so I went ahead and got a big beef sandwich.
By the way, I think this is one of the production guys right here.
Oh yeah, great guy. I met him and run into him a few times.
Yeah,
think really highly of that guy.
Yeah,
MG Geek. Shout out to him. We got the big beef, and then somebody told me I got to get the chocolate cake. So I got nothing but a sandwich and a slice of chocolate cake, and I'll tell you what, it was great. And then I got a little bonus because of Garrett's little story he's about to tell us.
Yeah, I actually bought 2 sandwiches on accident because I just misread how to order. And so Jeremy and I get to split a second sandwich, which was great because I think all I had at All Out was the CM Punk ice cream bar and like 2 pretzels. So it was a good deal to actually accidentally over order. And then what else was there? Got to hang out with my buddies Ryan Drosty and his Top Rope Nation crew. Ryan and I have been we originally were on the Blue Wire network, podcast network. And I am not doing a podcast right now for Blue Wire, though I do use their hosting for a San Francisco Giants podcast that I do. And so Ryan and I have known each other through text and through Facebook and everything for a few years. And then we finally got to hang out. We finally got to meet in person, have a drink. That was a lot of fun. His crew, great guys. I sat next to a few of them. And then we got to see, like I said, Damian and Inez. Robert and Lindsay came. I mentioned them already. Who was the young guy who came with us who needed the ride? What was his name? I
believe his name was David.
David, yeah, whatever David's last name is. That's all we know. But he had actually come up to me and he said, he's like, hey, you know, I know we have the group. I created a group for the events for people who want to be, kind of meet up and maybe carpool. And he's like, what's the best way to like maybe try and get a ride with somebody? And I was like, mingle, like go ask, like go. And so he comes to the Chili's when we're all there and I see him. I didn't flag him because I wanted him to see us and then see if my advice, made some sense to him. And it did, because then he came over and he got a ride with Damian and Inez, again, a couple of the MVPs of the weekend. So that was fun. And then I guess the last thing just to talk about is the Observer Q&A. I played sort of stickman and holding the mic for people. Like I got a couple barbs in on the audio portion, but that was your first Q&A, Jeremy?
Yeah. I've been to Q&As and Kongs and all that stuff, but it was par for the course for what I thought it was going to be and everything. Yeah, but it was my first for the Observer.
So lots of AEW questions, like that was pretty predominant. And now, we're at an AEW show, so that's expected. Were you surprised at any of the commentary, any of the questions that were asked?
I was particularly surprised by the lack of WWE questions.
There was a couple, but not that many.
It just seemed like nobody really had any interest in like poking that topic. They wanted to talk about the things that sounded like fun for them, and it wasn't WWE. WWE didn't sound fun to them. They wanted to talk about fun stuff.
And then so a person comes to ask a question. Now this wasn't on video, unfortunately. You saw the mixer problem that Brian had. They weren't able to do this with video. So we get a guy, comes in a mask. He's wearing a hat. And he says his name is Chris from Minneapolis or Chris from St. Paul or something like that. And and he asks a question about, I don't know, what are some licensees opportunities or something that are available for
major rights deals you can see in the future.
Yeah. And so I realize it is Chris Harrington, AEW VP. Some know him as Mookie Ghana, as his handle, his avatar. Brian immediately recognizes him. And I sense that Big Dave did not immediately recognize him because all Dave says is, "Hi," and that was it. And so Dave told me after that he immediately recognized him, but I was like, I don't know. Your reaction didn't tell me that you did. So he asks his question. They get a kick out of it. He sits down, and then I go, "Are we not gonna tell the rest of all of these 100 people that are in here who that guy was? Like, or can we let them in on the joke?" And then Dave says who it was. So we actually had an AEW VP hanging out with us, and then he held court at the end of the show because everyone wanted to talk to him.
He became the star of the whole thing afterwards.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's it. We are just at about an hour, which is what I wanted. But I guess the last question for both of you is based around momentum. Now, AEW has Dynamite in Cincinnati this week. Jon Moxley against Minoru Suzuki is the main event. I kind of wonder where this is going to lead to, because I think, Kojima was kind of like step one, or maybe even, there was a Kento may have been step one or whatever, but there's a clear level of next guys coming, I think, based off of what it looks like. What do you sense, Carlos, momentum as far as what AEW has, and what do you expect? Do you expect ratings to be up? Do you expect pay-per-view buys to be up? Can they still continue to build the momentum? Like, what are your thoughts about as we look into the future here?
I do think that they have the opportunity and they have the potential to keep the momentum and get it even higher. Because I thought, some people were kind of asking, can they sustain that momentum when CM Punk first showed up on a couple of weeks ago? And I think that the momentum's actually kind of gotten slightly bigger since then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's still obviously potential. I think the ratings are going to, at the very least for this upcoming, or I guess today's Tuesday, so tomorrow, I think the ratings for Dynamite are going to look good. I'm not sure if we go as far as saying like it's going to be top 3 Dynamite ratings wise of all time, but I think it's going to get a slight uptick. I think the pay-per-view buys for this show at the very least are going to be better. I remember Dave was asking over under 200,000. I think it may be right around that ballpark. So I think obviously now the big show, the next one is the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which I know it's a Dynamite taping, but I mean, you obviously can't treat that as if it was a normal Dynamite. You have to kind of treat it as it's almost like a pseudo pay-per-view. So I think that right now, I think tomorrow we're going to see like heavy seeds being planted for that Arthur Ashe Stadium show. And I think that momentum-wise, if they use Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson and CM Punk the right way, I mean, the sky's almost the limit for these guys.
Yeah, no, that's right. But you know what? If they didn't do their second best Dynamite rating for Wednesday, I think I'd be kind of disappointed. Just because, and that might just be because I just got back from there and it felt so hot. But the real world might tell me that maybe it's not as hot as I thought it was. But what do you think about that stuff, Jeremy?
I'm going to cycle back real quick to a question you had right before I came on, and who was the biggest star of the show, or my favorite thing about the show, and it was the audience. That audience said that they were locked into that show and that they loved it. So when I think about how it's going to work with TV on Wednesday, I'm really bullish that they're going to do a great job. But I also think it's going to be like a skipping stone method all the way through for the next 5 weeks, all the way about 2 weeks past the Arthur Ashe show through Rochester, because like Carlos is saying, tomorrow, I can't believe Dynamite is tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the Fallout, and they're going to be lining up the matches for New York. And then New York, they're going to be 2 weeks later, is going to be really telling you how people like that show and how they followed up and how they liked it. So I think things are going to be trending in a great direction. I think by the end of the year, we're going to be having real competitive discussions about WWE and AEW. But am I positive, convinced of that? No, that's just the feeling in the gut of my stomach.
And when I say, I'm not going to do like top 2 or top 3 ratings, I think, well, first of all, viewership as well. I don't think it's going to do like the usual 950 base 1 million.
Right.
I think it's going to be closer to about 1.2 million in my opinion. I don't think it's going to hit that 1.4 million. I think it's going to be anywhere between 1.2 and 1.3 in my opinion.
I think there'll be incremental increases. It's just a matter of how much the increments are going to be.
Okay, so I think we're done here. So I just want to thank the people who were in the chat. DJ Convoy, our buddy Chris, who I mentioned. I saw a few other people in there. D-Star, the Matman, MG Geek. We had Lindsay in there, Brady. So thanks to everybody who was in the chat. Thanks to everyone who's watching live. Hopefully you got a kick out of that. Some stories that you may have not known that was going on over the weekend. So Carlos, your podcast is going up tonight, Pound for Pound with you and Robert. What did you guys talk about? Just give people a sneak preview.
So we had a pretty good discussion over boxing and PEDs and drug tests for the first part, because we just had a world champion fail a VADA drug test and essentially get the equivalent of a slap on the wrist and 50 hours of community service as the punishment. And we also preview, some pretty good fights coming up. Also had a good discussion about a really good fight from Japan that I recommend people go out between Kazuto Ioka and Francisco Rodriguez Jr. And just an aside, last week's show was my recap of the Odyssey that was the Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley fight card, an entire fight week, which involved almost street fights happening, me being threatened, the venue being just an absolute dick to the media there. It was something else.
All right. So you can listen to that on the Fight Game Media Patreon. I'll throw the banner up one last time. Patreon.com/Fight Game Media. You can also hear all the content from over the weekend. I know John had a podcast that we put up right before All Out. We had 2 sort of All Out weekend podcasts, and then Paul and Jeff and Ryan had the All Out recap show. So for Jeremy, for Carlos, previously for Paul, and unfortunately JD wasn't able to make it, but we'll get him on at some other point. I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.